Take a look at this picture. What you're seeing is a giant inflatable rat, a handful of protesters, and a stadium that looks more like a high school gym on a Tuesday night than a professional sports arena. There are maybe 8 people there if you count the guy just walking his dog in the background. But this isn't just a failed protest. It's the visual representation of the WNBA officially jumping the shark. This is the moment where the league, after finally being handed the keys to the kingdom, decided to lock themselves out. After decades of being propped up by the NBA, they were finally offered salaries and media deals they could only have dreamed of just 24 months ago. But instead of taking the win, they've blown past the CBA deadline and are now dead set on holding out for even more. They're claiming they aren't being paid what they're owed, while the people who actually sign the checks are pointing at the ledger in total disbelief. The most shocking part isn't the greed. It's the timing. Fans and commentators who spend years being the league's biggest cheerleaders have suddenly turned. Even the most casual sports fans, the ones who usually don't have an opinion on women's basketball, are now pointing out that the league hasn't turned a single dollar of profit in 30 years. They're laughing because they can see what the players seemingly can't. By threatening to cancel the 2026 season, these players are effectively blowing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to grow the game for the next generation. But what if I told you the damage is already done? What if the Caitlin Clark effect didn't just bring in fans, but actually exposed a ceiling that the league can't or won't break through? The future isn't just uncertain. It feels like it's already been set in stone, and it's going to take a miracle to change the trajectory. This isn't a story about growth anymore. It's a story about acceptance. We have to look at the reality that the WNBA ecosystem might be its own worst enemy. To understand how we got to this inflatable rat moment, you have to understand what the WNBA was before April 2024. To borrow a line from a famous comedian, being a WNBA fan used to be like being in the Marines, the few, the proud. It was a niche product with a very specific, very loyal audience. The league was growing, sure, but it was growing at a snail's pace. It was losing 8 figures every single year, essentially acting as a tax write-off for NBA owners who were willing to subsidize the league with the hope that, eventually, it would find its own feet. But to stand on its own, the WNBA needed the one thing it could never quite grab, the casual fan. They didn't just need the diehards. They needed the people who watch the NFL on Sundays and the NBA playoffs, but otherwise don't think about basketball. They needed the holy grail of viewership, people with disposable income who just want to be entertained. Then, everything changed. Caitlin Clark entered the league and the numbers went nuclear. Viewership didn't just go up. It exploded by 170%. Teams like the Indiana Fever went from playing in front of empty rows to selling out every single night, actually outdrawing the NBA's Pacers in the same building. When Clark played a playoff game against the Connecticut Sun, 2.5 million people tuned in. To put that in perspective, that was more viewers than the actual WNBA finals could pull in. The league suddenly found itself sitting on a media rights deal worth over $2 billion, more than tripling their previous value. It was a fairy tale. The players saw the money, smelled the change in the air, and opted out of their collective bargaining agreement early. At first, nobody blamed them. It felt like a transformative moment for women's sports. But as the spotlight got brighter, the cracks in the league's foundation began to show in a way that no one expected. This is where the story takes a weird turn. Usually, when a business gets a massive surge of new customers, they do everything they can to keep them. But parts of the WNBA ecosystem, the players, certain media members, and even some executives did the exact opposite. They fought the new fans. It reminds me of the Black Eyed Peas. Before 2002, they were a respected underground hip-hop group. They had all the street cred in the world, but they weren't selling out stadiums. Then they added Fergie. Suddenly, they were the biggest pop group on the planet. They traded the underground clubs for global arenas, but the original fans were furious. They hated that the new audience didn't know the culture. They wanted the group to stay small and pure rather than big and successful. The WNBA just had its Fergie moment, and it didn't handle it well. Caitlin Clark was the pop crossover that filled the seats. But instead of celebrating the sold-out tour, the old guard of the league spent the entire year frustrated that the new fans didn't know the history of the league from 1997. They policed how people talked about the game. They acted as if the sudden influx of billions of dollars was just a natural progression rather than a result of a singular, transformative talent. And while the Black Eyed Peas took the money and ran with it, the WNBA seems intent on proving they don't need the new fans at all. But that pride is coming at a devastating cost, and the numbers are starting to reflect the fallout. If you look closely at how the media covers the league now, you'll see some of the most creative accounting in sports history. After the 2025 draft, major networks were shouting from the rooftops that draft viewership was up 119%. It sounds incredible until you read the fine print. They were comparing the 2025 numbers to 2023. Why? Because if they compared them to 2024, the year Caitlin Clark was drafted, they'd have to admit that viewership actually plummeted by nearly 50%. Half the audience simply vanished because the star attraction wasn't there. This isn't just a minor detail. It's a symptom of a much larger problem. The league is trying to pretend that the rising tide lifts all boats. But the data suggests that only one boat has an engine. And everyone else is just drifting. This denial of reality is exactly why the public support for the current player strike is so low. The players are asking for a massive slice of a pie that hasn't even been baked yet. The league has already offered to quadruple salaries, despite the fact that they are still technically losing money. According to league officials, the players' latest demands would put the WNBA $700 million in the red over the next few seasons. It's a bold strategy to demand a king's ransom when your primary benefactor, the NBA, is the only reason your checks don't bounce. And yet, the players seem ready to walk away from the 2026 season entirely. It's a game of chicken where the players are driving a car they don't actually own. But let's get to the real truth that this entire saga has exposed. The WNBA has a self-imposed ceiling. For years, the argument was that the league just needed more exposure. Well, they got it. They got the primetime slots, the Nike deals, and the social media buzz. But what they realized is that mainstream attention is a double-edged sword. Mainstream sports culture isn't polite. It's tribal, it's loud, and it's often very critical. If you play poorly in the NFL, you get roasted on Twitter. If you're a superstar in the NBA, people scrutinize your every move. The WNBA wanted the mainstream money, but they didn't want the mainstream heat. They wanted a safe space where everyone is treated with equal reverence, regardless of who is actually bringing in the revenue. This is the fundamental disconnect. You cannot have a multi-billion-dollar entertainment product and then get upset when the audience acts like sports fans. When the league and its supporters started attacking the new fans for being too obsessed with Caitlin Clark, or for criticizing the veteran players who were physical with her on the court, they sent a clear message. We want your money, but we don't want you. It was a rejection of the very culture that makes professional sports profitable. By policing the discourse and trying to force-feed the audience equity instead of entertainment, they built a ceiling that stops the league from ever becoming truly massive. And that brings us to the Caitlin paradox. There are millions of people right now who are massive fans of Caitlin Clark, but they have zero interest in the WNBA as a whole. In fact, many of them have grown to actively dislike the league because of how it treated its biggest star. The league's identity is now tied to a conflict between the old guard and the new wave. As long as that friction exists, the growth will be capped. The WNBA ceiling is effectively Caitlin's ceiling. They reached the top of the mountain, looked at the view, and decided they didn't like the people who helped them climb it. What happens next is the most dangerous part of the story. If the players actually follow through with a strike, they aren't just hitting a pause button. They might be hitting the eject button. The NBA owners, who have been patient for 30 years, are starting to look at the numbers and the drama and wonder if the investment is still worth the headache. The miracle the league needed happened in 2024, but instead of building a cathedral around it, they started an argument about who gets to sit in the front row. The reality is that the WNBA doesn't have a talent problem, and it doesn't have an exposure problem anymore. It has a culture problem. Until they accept that a professional sports league is a business fueled by stars and the casuals who love them, that giant inflatable rat might be the only thing filling their seats in the years to come. The question isn't whether the league will survive, but whether it will ever be allowed to truly thrive, or if it will stay trapped under a ceiling of its own making.